And now it's time to choose sides. That's the focus of tonight's angle.
The plants are starting to construction already. We have many plants. Indiana, massive auto plant, the Honda, and we have so many plants, and they'll be under construction. And as they start to build, you're going to see a lot of construction jobs, and you're going to see a lot of jobs when they open.
So where was AOC? Where was Bernie? Where was Chuck? Where was Hakeem yesterday in the Rose Garden? Well, a lot of hard hats were there, right? The working people who make stuff with their hands. You know, those Democrats like to sell themselves as the champions of those hard hat people, the working people, the underdogs, the little guys.
We need a Democratic Party that fights harder for us with the courage to brawl for the working class.
We need great candidates here to stand up for the working class. Let's stand together. All
right, the media echo this. They serve kind of as co-managers of the Democrat working class brand. Although they have billionaires like Soros and Reid Hoffman, David Geffen filling their coffers, Democrats claim that Trump's the one who doesn't care about regular Americans.
Republicans right now are a party that's really just about the wealthiest, the oligarchs, so to speak, in this country, about Elon Musk and Donald Trump.
Donald Trump doesn't care about those people. He never has, never will.
Okay, this is just absurd on its face. Trump's first-term economic record pre-COVID, where real median household incomes saw their biggest gains in decades, that gave the forgotten men and women not only money in their pockets, it gave them hope again. And if Trump's an oligarch, why after 4 long years of sleepy, creepy Joe did Americans making under $50,000 without college degrees go MAGA? Why did that happen? And fast forward to yesterday, Liberation Day. Who's happiest today about Trump's reciprocal tariffs? Well, obviously not Wall Street, not those who raked in big money offshoring jobs. In fact, they're busy trying to scare you into turning on Trump. The sky is falling. The sky is definitely falling.
New fears of an American and maybe global recession. This is one of the biggest down days since COVID.
What makes this one different is that it's not a market event. Secondarily, it is. It's really an event that impacts the real economy, Main Street.
Nothing is safe. There is really nowhere to hide because retail is generally an important sector.
Ignore the noise. Take a breath. Remember what Trump said about the tariff doomsdayers on Wednesday?
Never forget, every prediction our opponents made about trade for the last 30 years has been proven totally wrong. They were wrong about NAFTA. They were wrong about China. They were wrong about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. In my first term, they said tariffs would crash the economy. Instead, we built the greatest economy in the history of the world.
No one has been more consistent over the years, over the decades, in calling out the globalists' grandiose promises than Donald Trump.
I'd make our allies pay their fair share. We're a debtor nation. Something's going to happen over the next number of years with this country, because you can't keep going on losing $200 billion, and yet we let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade. If you ever go to Japan right now and try to sell something, forget about it, Oprah. Just forget about it. It's almost impossible. They don't have laws against it. They just make it impossible. They come over here, they sell their cars, their VCRs, they knock the hell out of our companies. The poorest person in Kuwait, they live like kings. And yet they're not paying. We make it possible for them to sell their oil. Why aren't they paying us 25% of what they're making? It's a joke.
Consistency. Look, we had, what, 40 years of the globalist policies? And we ended up with an America where, yes, a middle-class couple can buy a lot of, like, $8.99 T-shirts for their kids at Target, but a home of their own in a decent neighborhood? It's becoming out of reach. The globalists in the D.C. Uniparty were fine with keeping that dynamic in place, the middle class constantly struggling to make ends meet. But Trump understood how damaging and ultimately how dangerous that is for the country. So, of course, those happiest about Trump's new trade rules are the men and women who get up every day and build more than portfolios.
From where we are in Pennsylvania to Wisconsin to Michigan, when the auto worker was there and said, you know, I have seen over my lifetime every factory, every plant, every mill closed down was complete music to our ears out here because we live in this wasteland. At some point, somebody needs to speak up for us. And this is why we voted for Donald Trump. Full stop.
Now, it wasn't Trump's goal, but he exposed the fake populists yesterday. Again, Hakeem Jeffries, Jayapal, Rashida Tlaib, AOC, Bernie, if they truly cared about the people who've been left behind, they would have stood in solidarity with Donald Trump, even if they don't agree with him on a lot of other issues. But they would have stood for trade policies that give our workers a fighting chance. Instead, they actually chose to stand with China and every other country that steals from us. Instead, they chose to stand with the same big Democrat donors who love outsourcing our jobs, who love setting up factories abroad. And instead, those fake populists chose to ignore the plight of small towns across America where shuttered factories left behind a trail of drug addiction and despair. America wasn't founded on free trade, contrary to what you've heard, even from some senators today. We were founded on the idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it's pretty hard to find happiness or even pursue happiness when you're working 2, maybe 3 jobs and still can't get ahead. So do we want that America, or do we want an America where we take pride in having a thriving middle class? Trump is betting it all on the latter. And we're going to keep tabs on those who peddle lies and half-truths in a desperate effort to prop up the failed global trade order. And that's the angle.
The operation's over. The doctor said it went well. The patient will be out in a minute, and you'll be able to say hi.
It was an operation, like when a patient gets operated on, and it's a big thing. I said this would exactly be the way it is. We have $6 or $7 trillion coming into our country, and we've never seen anything like it. The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom, and the rest of the world wants to see, is there any way they can make a deal?
Trump says the prognosis is that the patient will be stronger, bigger, better, and more resilient than ever before. But first, it has to heal. And healing takes time. The American economy is in pain. It's been walking around with a limp for decades. Emergency surgery was necessary.
For 40 years, we have gone down that pathway. We've seen closing factories. We've seen rising inflation. We've seen the cost of housing so high that most Americans can't afford to buy a home right now. President Trump is taking this economy in a different direction. He ran on that, he promised it, and now he's delivering. And yes, this is a big change. I'm not going to shy away from it, but we needed a big change, Lawrence. We cannot keep going down the Joe Biden globalist pathway where we have $2 trillion of peacetime debt and deficits. We have manufacturing disappearing. That is not working for Americans. We've got to take this country in a different direction.
Kamala Harris admitted during the campaign that the American dream was dead. She didn't have to say it, but we all knew it. Her boss and his gang killed it. American workers haven't gotten a real raise in 30 years. And the saddest part is our own companies conspired with the politicians to keep it that way. They moved factories out of the country, used dirt cheap foreign labor, and sold the product back into the country with no tariff and made a killing. And then they said, enjoy your cheap TVs. Well, what good's a cheap TV if you're barely making any money, your factory closed down, and you live in a ghost town? Watch your shows and shut up, is basically what they said. Is that really the best we can do for the country?
What gives you so much certainty that this is going to work and that this isn't going to hurt the everyday American?
The largest tariff and trade barrier country in the world is China, and they don't have inflation. So these things don't occur the way people suggest they do. This is a reordering of global trade for the benefit of America. These people have all been living in our house. They've been driving our car. They come by and visit, open our fridge, and eat our food whenever they want. They've taken advantage of us. Today was the day of the beginning of saying, I'm sorry, you can't just live for free off of us. You have to pay.
It's only been 24 hours since the surgery, and the media is already saying, they can't walk. Paul Krugman wonders, will malignant stupidity kill the world economy? Well, Krugman knows a thing or two about being malignantly stupid. He's the one who said if Trump was elected in 2016, he'd plunge the world into a recession. Instead, wages rose, unemployment hit 50-year lows, the stock market hit all-time highs, and we had zero inflation. And Trump's not worried about the world economy. He's worried about the American one. Jim Cramer's chiming in, too.
We have a market that was doing extremely well last year until the Trump administration sowed a level of uncertainty that I can't recall any time since Are You Ready, Ski Daddy, Jimmy Carter, which is the last time people were really worried about inflation, about stagflation, okay? Back then, stagflation was real. Now, Jimmy Carter, curious benchmark. Break out the cardigan sweater. I know it's a brutal comparison. You think I did it idly? I cannot think of another president in my lifetime who knocked down the stock market simply by opening his mouth.
Cramer's the guy who told you to sell Tesla 15 years ago. It's up 20,000% since then. When Trump slapped tariffs on China in his first term, the stock market tanked too. And Cramer's eyeballs popped right out of his head. But then his eyeballs always pop right back in because manufacturing came back, China negotiated a deal, and the market ripped. The people criticizing the trade war have been wrong about everything. These are the same people who triggered China's rise, the same people who pushed NAFTA, and the same people who said, let's just shut down the entire economy for 2 years and spend $1 gazillion. So far, Trump's been right about China, the border, the Green New scam. There's a pretty good chance he's right about trade. Donald Trump isn't the president of the New York Stock Exchange. He's the president of the United States of America and is looking at the future of the country 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now, not just earnings the next quarter. Pat Buchanan once said, quote, to me, the country comes before the economy, and the economy exists for the people. And not just certain people, everyone. The way we're talking about globalism kind of reminds me of COVID. Remember how you weren't really allowed to question anything? Governors who wanted to end lockdowns, they were called dumb and dangerous. Everyone had to conform. Well, the lockdowns weren't working for most of us. And if globalism's not working anymore, we're allowed to change it up. Trump's got every right to change it up. He ran on it and won on it. We're not just asking everybody to change their religion. Just change how much access we give the world. Because right now we're giving the world full access and getting nothing back. This isn't new. America used to have no income tax. We raised all revenue from tariffs. And that made us an industrial powerhouse that won us 2 world wars. Protecting the working man used to be what both parties did. Here's Nancy from '96. She sounded like Trump in a pantsuit.
In terms of jobs, this is the biggest and cruelest hoax of all. Not only do we not have market access, not only do they have prohibitive tariffs, not only are our exports not let in very specifically, but China benefits with at least 10 million jobs from U.S.-China trade.
Nancy used to be a patriot, but then all of her pillow talk with Paulie P made her $200 million, and now all she cares about is her portfolio, not the American people. Back in the day, Bernie Sanders was calling Bush and Obama sellouts for what they did to the country.
What they have said is that we need to not worry about manufacturing in America, because what we should establish is a policy of unfettered free trade. We don't need tariffs. What we need is to allow corporate America the freedom to throw American workers out on the street, because somehow, Madam President, we are going to create wealth in America and good-paying jobs in America as we shut down plants, we move to China, corporations there pay workers 20, 30 cents an hour, and we bring the product back into this country.
History proved both of them right. So why aren't Bernie and Nancy celebrating Liberation Day? Nancy called Trump's tariffs reckless, and Bernie said nothing. Trump's doing what Democrats demanded for decades: protect our industry and commit to fair trade. Now, I'm only in my 40s. I know I look a lot younger. But I've never seen a president stand up to Wall Street. Have you? Trump just stared the market right in the face while it sold off 4%. It's like sending your screwed up son to a military academy. You know it's going to hurt him at first, and he's not going to like it, and it's going to be painful. But in the long run, it's going to make him a man. The right thing to do isn't always easy. It's easy to do nothing and keep the country crumbling. and let the next generation handle it, we're already seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. General Motors just announced it's ramping up production of trucks in Indiana, and hiring more Americans. Big Beef is over the moon about tariffs. They say, for too long, America's family farmers and ranchers have been mistreated by certain trading partners around the world. President Trump is taking action to address numerous trade barriers that prevent consumers overseas from enjoying high-quality, wholesome American beef. There's billions of consumers in Australia, India, China, Japan, Europe, and we can't sell them our beautiful beef. We can't sell them our cars, our rice. They can tax our products, but if we dare tax theirs, it's insanity. Silicon Valley's excited about the tariffs because the Europeans have been brutalizing them. Some are so excited they're moving next door to the White House. Zuckerberg just paid $23 million for his own personal embassy next to Trump. Energy prices, mortgage rates, treasury yields, already all coming down. And the administration's already liking what it sees. And if you're worried cars are going to cost more, buy American. Ford is giving shoppers a handshake deal.
For the next couple of months, we're going to offer our customers the same deal that our employees get. And as you say, that's worth thousands of dollars. You come into our store, you get employee pricing. This is kind of to call a little bit of a timeout. We've heard some uncertainty from our customers, and we want them to be assured that Ford, the most American auto company, is going to do right by them, as are our dealers. We make the most cars here. We employ the most. We export the most. And so we here at Ford, we're in a good position to address customers' concern and give them a really great deal on a great vehicle.
Now, we don't know how long the trade war is going to last, but countries are already lining up to bargain.
Those tariffs have come in, and every country's called us. That's the beauty of what we do. We put ourselves in the driver's seat. If we would have asked some of these countries, almost most of these countries, to do us a favor, they would have said no. Now they'll do anything for us.
Are you open to deals with these countries if they're calling you?
Well, it depends. If somebody said that we're going to give you something that's so phenomenal, as long as they're giving us something that's good. The tariffs give us great power to negotiate. Always have. I've used them very well in the first administration, as you saw, but now we're taking it to a whole new level because it's a worldwide situation.
France, Thailand, South Korea, already signaling they'll just do whatever we want. This is the first time in 100 years America's stood up for itself on trade. Countries know 47 means business because he knows business. Eric Trump puts it this way, quote, "I wouldn't want to be the last country that tries to negotiate a trade deal with the president. The first to negotiate will win. The last will absolutely lose. I've seen this movie my entire life."
And welcome to Hannity as we begin another busy news night. In just a moment, we're going to bring you all the big developments from President Trump's Liberation Day shakeup. We will also help educate, it's a public service, Democrats, a legacy media mob, about the virtues of fair trade, the virtues of a little bit of courage and not living your life in total, complete cowardice and fear. And later, Senator Lindsey Graham, he's unveiling a bold new plan to move fast on the president's economic agenda in Congress, including permanent tax cuts, no tax on tips, Social Security, overtime, with or without Democratic support and without any input from the Senate parliamentarian. We'll explain, gets a little complicated, not too complicated. Also tonight, we're going to get a progress report from border czar Tom Homan, who continues to outflank one far-left activist judge after another. And the great Stephen A. Smith is going to join us. He's going to tell us why he's now growing weary and skeptical of Barack Obama. And in our other news of the day segment, we have, well, NHL fights, Whoopi's resistance, and we'll tell you where to go to survive an alien invasion. I'm sure you've all been waiting for that. But we begin with another predictable cycle of feigned moral outrage from the Democratic radical left. The chicken littles of the left, they're at it again. For about the 500th time in a decade, they tell us the world is coming to an end. It's over. Donald Trump spoke, this time over President Trump's reciprocal tariffs. Look, it's a choice between protecting American industry. It's about saving you money. It's about high-paying career jobs for hardworking Americans all across the country versus allowing the rest of the world to rip you off and restrict our products in their markets and walk all over our workers and walk all over our country. Democrats, they've chosen the latter. This is particularly insane coming from a party that loves to use the phrase working folks. Remember, not long ago, Democrats, they claimed to care about the Rust Belt, American manufacturing, about union workers, about living wages. They're the minimum wage party. Maybe that's where they want everybody, on minimum wage. Even Nancy Pelosi promoted tariffs as a critical tool to protect American industry against unfair practices of foreign countries. Sounds like Trump. Take a look.
In terms of tariffs, I think it's interesting to note that the average U.S. MFN tariff on Chinese goods coming into the United States is 2%, whereas the average Chinese MFN tariff on U.S. goods going into China is 35%. Is that reciprocal? You have a serious threat not only to our relationship, but to the industrialized world. And if there's one message that I want our colleagues to understand today and our constituents is that on this day, your member of Congress could have drawn the line to say to the President of the United States, do something about this U.S.-China trade relationship that is a job loser for the United States.
Wow, sound familiar? She even used the word reciprocal. As a matter of fact, 8 years before Pelosi made those remarks, Donald Trump was on with Oprah Winfrey with a similar message. The only difference is Pelosi changed. Trump did not.
We're a debtor nation. Something's going to happen over the next number of years with this country because you can't keep going on losing $200 billion, and yet we let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade. If you ever go to Japan right now and try to sell something, forget about it, Oprah. Just forget about it. It's almost impossible. They don't have laws against it. They just make it impossible. They come over here, they sell their cars, their VCRs, they knock the hell out of our companies. And, hey, I have tremendous respect for the Japanese people. I mean, you can respect somebody that's beating the hell out of you, but they are beating the hell out of this country. Kuwait, they live like kings. The poorest person in Kuwait, they live like kings. And yet they're not paying. We make it possible for them to sell their oil. Why aren't they paying us 25% of what they're making? It's a joke.
Why doesn't Oprah, why didn't she support him? Anyway, unlike Pelosi, President Trump still cares about American workers, the American industry, and a lot of industries are impacted by this. He meant what he said. He campaigned on restoring free and fair trade, and now he's fulfilling his commitment that he made to all of you, the American people. And on the other side of the aisle, Democrats are perfectly content to overlook unbalanced tariffs that effectively block American products abroad. The party of compassion also seems to have no problem with Chinese sweatshops, other foreign businesses flooding our market with cheap goods, intellectual property theft, and they do it year after year, killing off high-paying American jobs in the process. It really does make you wonder, do the Democrats stand for anything other than biological men playing women's sports, open borders, and unlimited government waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption? Oh, and bingo cards when a president is speaking. Just so we are clear, the world is not ending. Instead, as we speak, dozens and dozens of countries are desperately trying to negotiate with the White House. They don't want Donald Trump's tariffs. And guess what? Most of them will give in and capitulate, and he will win. The playing field is now getting leveled. A little messy in the beginning. As Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent pointed out, Trump's reciprocal tariffs plan is a winning strategy. Take a look.
Everybody sit back, take a deep breath. Don't immediately retaliate. Let's see where this goes, because if you retaliate, that's how we get escalation. Remember that the history of trade is we are the deficit country. The deficit country has an advantage. They are the surplus countries. The surplus countries traditionally always lose any kind of a trade escalation. So I did, as a student of economic history or a professor of economic history, I'd advise against it.
So amid all the hysteria on the left and in the media mob and the Democrats, there are two important points to remember. One, as Bessent described, this plan is based on logic and leverage led by a president who's a natural-born deal-maker. 2, this is the land of the free, the home of the brave, where manifest destiny becomes reality for people. This is the last place on earth where free thought, new innovative ideas are welcomed, rewarded, where almost anything is possible with hard work, sound principles, a positive attitude. And by the way, this perfectly describes President Trump. Take a look.
I think it's going very well. It was an operation like when a patient gets operated on, and it's a big thing. I said this would exactly be the way it is. We have $6 or $7 trillion coming into our country, and we've never seen anything like it. The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom, and the rest of the world wants to see, is there any way they can make a deal?
By the way, since the trade tariff talk began and the threat began, we have almost $5 trillion in committed money to be spent in the United States. Not an accident. We've been scrolling that list for you night after night. I have no doubt that American innovators, American workers, they will reach new heights with fair trade practices. One of those innovators, of course, Elon Musk. He's been busy helping root out waste, fraud, abuse, corruption inside our government. And moments ago, President Trump previewed a massive new development from the dedicated team at Doge that is saving you a lot of money. Take a look.
Do you have a sense of how long Elon Musk's mission will last and when he will depart?
Well, Elon is fantastic, and I think it's, he's a patriot, and I think it's a shame what they're doing with his car company, and a great car. It's a great car, great product. I would say Elon will stay for a certain period of time, and then he's going to want to get back to his businesses full time. But he's done a fantastic job. We found hundreds of, think of it, just hundreds of, we found millions of dollars of fraud and abuse and waste, and they're still going. I mean, they're going strong. They found something today that's horrible. It's horrible. So what they found, well, you'll find out very soon.
Will Doge stick around in some kind of capacity?
Yeah, it'll still Doge itself. Yeah.
Trump proclaimed April 2nd Liberation Day when global tariffs went into effect, which makes me wonder, has our country and its taxpayers gotten ripped off for more than 50 years?
Our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it is not going to happen anymore. It's not going to happen.
Trump calls them reciprocal tariffs. But, Mr. President, what does that mean?
Reciprocal. That means they do it to us and we do it to them. Very simple. Can't get any simpler than that. Again, reciprocal. Back and forth. Back and forth.
Back and forth. Back and forth. Kind of like how you return a beached whale to the ocean. Oh. And what about that old-fashioned term, groceries?
An old-fashioned term that we use, groceries. I used it on the campaign. It's such an old-fashioned term, but a beautiful term, groceries. It sort of says a bag with different things in it.
Yeah, it's a bag with different things in it. That's how they describe Joy Behar's CAT scan. Oh. But look, Trump knows what he's doing because he runs successful businesses before, unlike the current Dems who want to tell you how to run your life but show no evidence of how well they've run theirs. Have any of them ever accomplished anything before politics? No, it's degree, law school activist ran over a teenager drunk. It's the Democrat career path. The power comes first, then the money. That's how you get a first lady who insists you call her doctor. But her one patient's been on life support for a decade. Yeah. Remember our last president who spent his entire professional life in government? He doesn't. And the Dem president before that was a community organizer, what normal people call unemployable. Yet now he's got homes in D.C., Hawaii, Martha's Vineyard, with a basketball court for Barack and a weight room for Michelle. Go back further. What did Bill Clinton actually do before government? You know, besides a few dozen hookers and countless lines of coke. Chuck Schumer, the only thing Chuck did besides government is create new ways to kill Batman. Bernie Sanders, the guy lived in a commune before being booted for hoarding soup. There's Cory Booker, whose greatest achievement is going a day straight without peeing. Well, at least he did something straight. What? I don't get it. AOC tended bar before politics, where the most popular order was turn up the TV and stop talking. Before becoming Cardi B with a head injury, Jasmine Crockett was an ambulance chaser. She was an ambulance chaser doing pro bono work for BLM. And trust me, BLM overpaid. Now look at the Trump machine, filled with people who did great things first, then public service. Our current prez built half the Manhattan skyline. And without those buildings, where could the left protest? Then we got the world's richest guy, who also rescues astronauts and helps the paralyzed walk, and other stuff that I do on the weekends. He's even tackling the decline in the world's population, one hot chick at a time. Pete Hegseth, career military, multiple deployments, Fox and Friends host, which some say is worse than two tours in Iraq. There's Howard Lutnick, Scott Bessent, Vivek. They were all about accomplishments first and service later. See, successful people realize that life is a ladder with 2 steps. Level 1, you figure out your life first. Level 2, then you help others. The Dems reverse that. Level 1, solve the world's problems from a position of inexperience. Level 2, get rich off your phony status. Meaning their first level of sacrifice is really just self-serving. You can exploit being a community organizer, but not developing real estate. It's why this idiot became mayor of LA, but not this guy. Under Bass, LA burned to the ground, and since then has issued only 4 permits to rebuild homes. Meanwhile, Rick Caruso, a real estate tycoon, has already launched a new group aimed at expediting the city's rebuild. You can't get a better contrast. It's like a swimsuit contest between Rosie O'Donnell, and a chick. This is why you have to fix your world before you fix the outside world. It's no surprise that leftist activists have awful personal lives. They perform globally, but ignore locally. Oh, let's clean the planet, everyone. I'll shower next week. It would be funny if we weren't at their mercy. The more they try to fix the world, the worse our world gets. That's their only path to equality, making everybody as miserable as they are. Welcome. Tonight's guest. He once spent an entire month strung out on hair conditioner. Co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend, Charlie Hurd. He's the argument against warning labels on poison. Comedian Joe Mackey. He's the reason for background checks. Former GOP Congressman George Santos. And finally, she only has one name, just like polio. Host of the Kennedy Saves the World podcast, Kennedy. Charlie, I'm not going to name names, but if you go on X, you see a lot of conservatives melting down in kind of an exercise of like, see how bad this is, see how bad this is. I'm right. Tariffs are bad. Tariffs are bad. Trump is ruining the world. And it's like, nothing's happened, you idiot.
Yeah, surprise, Wall Street does not like the tariffs.
Yeah, why don't they like it?
Because, well, they claim to be free market, but you know what? They have a really hard time explaining it to us dumb people.
Yes.
So that we can. Trump is able to explain it perfectly. And by the way, if you're going to be free market, then why are governments negotiating all these free market deals?
Exactly.
A free market deal would be a deal that we just make among ourselves. I love everything about your monologue, especially the part about, and it's so simple, these people become millionaires.
Yeah.
They come to Washington with nothing, and they leave millionaires. And when Donald Trump first ran in 2015, he would sit down. He hired some people, some political people in town, and he would begin. The campaign would begin every single conference call with their surrogates, saying, "Donald Trump is a builder. He builds buildings," and everyone on the call would start laughing.
Yeah.
Like, what does this mean? This doesn't mean anything. It means everything. And the American people saw through all of it. He is not a political ideologue. He is a practical guy. And so, and that's why I think that a lot of people have faith in him. You know, obviously the tariffs thing, who knows how all this plays out. But because he's not an ideologue, if it turns out that there are bad things that happen, he will change.
Yeah, and also, I mean, he's been ahead of the curve on everything.
Everything.
So you kind of got to, you have good faith in him. Joe, a lot of people don't know this about you, but you're a comedian. I'm kidding. You're pretty knowledgeable on trade, and I want to ask you a softball question that I asked Harold Ford and that he didn't answer today. Is there any proof that free trade actually pays off for American workers?
No, there isn't. That's the reason that the stock market's going down today, because all the executives and stockholders in these companies that really profited by shipping jobs overseas, where they don't have to face environmental standards, where they don't have to have high wages, have been getting a lot richer than they would be otherwise, where if we had a level playing field, that's what it kind of plays into your point about how a lot of the politicians don't have any real world experience, where there are consequences, where the incentives matter. And when you have two options, one is that you can have your factory in a country with high wages and high labor standards, or face no penalty for having your factory overseas with none of those things. You're not going to pick the high labor standard thing. And I understand that free trade is a good thing in theory, but so is having a rock band that plays funk music and party music, but then when you hear it, it's the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and it's terrible. and all these people saying that we're going to lose this trade war, well, the joke's on them. We don't make anything. And it's a national security issue as well. People are saying we're going to go to war with China. How are we going to go to war with the country that makes everything that we need? It's like one of my many lovers attacking me and then asking for access to my body.
So true. So true. George, I have to ask you, because I don't have the answer. What did you do before politics? You just kind of showed up.
So I was actually in capital markets here. Oh. I worked a couple of blocks away from here, so in professional fundraising. So understand Wall Street well.
So what do you think's going on with the stock market?
The stock market has become it's hysteria because it's run by a bunch of hysterical little bitches. That's literally what we have today. Like, if you look at the CEOs of all the big financial institutions, they're acting like little girls in 7th grade. They're just scared Trump is a prettier girl in the room, if we're to equate it that way. But I think this is all reactionary. And look, I'm not a tariff guy. I'm skeptical, obviously, but I trust this guy. I trust this president. I trusted him the first time. I mean, hell, I voted for the guy 3 times, right? So, and I get to have him 2 terms.
And that was just in November.
You know, so I look at it that we're going to have a good time with this, and I'm excited. But look, Greg, to your monologue, as far as not being able to sleep with Chinese nationals, I'm worried. I need to interrupt the show to go call Eric Swalwell to see what he's doing.
Exactly.
Like, this is going to be a big hit for him.
I know. You know, Kennedy. You know, I think the word for the tariffs is negotiation. And like the media seems to be avoiding that word. It's all about, oh my God, the stock market went down and it's never coming back up.
Yes.
They're insane. They think we're all idiots.
No, and I know there are people who have a lot of money invested in the stock market, particularly people who don't have any other assets, and they've got a 401k. And for people who are close to retirement, it gives them a lot of anxiety because they fear that, you know, if it goes down precipitously, they don't have time for it to go back up in order to achieve the number that they want in order to retire. And I totally understand that. And it's not just rich jerks who are invested in Wall Street. You know, the average investor certainly doesn't run Wall Street, but they're hoping to God that this works out. And I guess that's where I am, because There's a part of it that I philosophically disagree with, and I am of the school that tariffs are taxes if they do, in fact, raise prices on a lot of things that people formerly could afford. But if for some reason, like, I'm completely wrong and this works, I am on America's side here. Like, I want it to work, even if Trump's not president, even if it's some friggin' pinko. If they can figure out a system that works for America and makes people here more prosperous, then I take that as a win.
You know, I understand. When you said that tariffs are a tax, couldn't you say that anything that contributes to the price of something then would be a tax? Does that make sense?
I mean, the fluctuations in the market, like something as simple
But I mean,
as
like,
supply and
if you
demand.
decide to use a different kind of paint on your marital aid, that would raise the price. That would be a tax.
I tend to not paint mine because I don't want to get a...
What, Joe?
Well, if it was a tax, it's a tax you can avoid by bringing your jobs, your factories back to the United States. You know, there aren't many taxes you can avoid by hiring Americans. I guess, like, maybe Hunter Biden will get American prostitutes in the future.
Yes. And good for him. All right, we got to move on. Up next, Obama backstabbed Kamala.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.